and a very warm welcome to the first episode of That Grassroots Ramble. We've built this amazing studio here to delve into a range of topics affecting the grassroots football game. We'll be interviewing loads of industry experts, we'll be taking your questions, your answers, sharing your opinions and delving into a whole range of interesting topics.
That's right, Charlotte. And the show is brought to you by us here at My Club Pro. For those of you that aren't familiar with us, we basically provide websites to grassroots football clubs all over the UK. You mentioned the studio. Got to give a big shout out to John Cuthbertson at Corsham FC, who provided this lovely window photo behind me. And over the coming weeks, we're going to be giving you some tips and tricks on marketing your club online, as well as diving into some of the hot topics in grassroots football. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to give us a like and a subscribe.
Coming up on today's show.
Part of our club marketing series, we'll be talking social media with our very own Charlotte Richardson and the role it should play at your club.
And with winter in full and merciless swing, we'll be having a chat with Kent FA's Groundsman of the Year, Scott Byers, to find out just what you should be doing to maintain your pitch and help keep games on this winter.
And in our topic of the week, we'll be taking a look at the effectiveness of the new sin bin rule. It's a controversial one and we'll be sharing your views on the topic too. So let the ramble begin, and no better place to start with who's on the sofa already. Charlotte, over the summer, we delivered our club marketing workshop, didn't we, at Kent FA HQ to a number of clubs.
Yeah, we did, and it was really successful. And I think in the promotion of that event alone, we kind of identified that it wasn't just Kent clubs who needed a little bit of advice around marketing their football club. So, you know, I guess the idea was born to do the show. So
it was. And to give our viewers a little bit of background about yourself, you worked in the grassroots game, haven't you, in marketing for a number of years. But just what role should marketing play within football?
Marketing should play a really important function, but given everything that a football club needs and requires to operate, sometimes it can be a little bit forgotten about, particularly in the grassroots game where it's reliant on a number of volunteers. But ultimately, marketing can be a really important foundation for the sustainability of any football club at any level.
Yeah, I think it certainly gets overlooked, doesn't it, at times? Okay, let's pretend that my club has no social media presence at all. Where should I start?
So the great thing about social media is that it's free, and there's a lot of really, really good channels out there. The ones that I recommend and see clubs of all levels using the most tend to be Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. But one really key bit and critical bit of information that I always advise clubs is if you're going to be online and be on social media, don't feel like you have to do everything. Pick the one channel that you feel is suitable towards your audience and do that channel really well.
It's definitely important, isn't it? I think if you try and do too much, you just spread yourself too thin. Right, so now I'm on social media, but why should I be using it?
Social media plays a really important function. Again, because it's free, a lot of people can access it, and more so now we find that we're completely addicted to our smartphones. I think even the average phone user is on their phone 3 hours a day. And if we just look at the cultural trend globally in our communications, the fact that we do our online shopping via our phone, we connect with our friends on phones, we arrange Christmas do's and functions on our phone, it therefore makes sense to, if you're a football club, be on your phone as well. So social media is a really important device to get in touch with people. And then I think if we look at the wider scale of the game, the Football Association, the governing body of football in this country, they're developing a lot more apps, again, because they understand that the average grassroots user on a Saturday morning or a Sunday afternoon when they're inputting results and administering their football club are doing it online on their phone. And social media really is no different.
That's right. Everything's going online, isn't it, nowadays? And the grassroots game's no different. Okay, so we know the people we want to speak to spend a lot of time on social media, but what are the key benefits to the club?
So a first key benefit would be that the communication via social media is almost instantaneous. If you build a really good online community of engaged users, and they will be engaged because if it's their son or daughter that plays for the team, or if it's them that's coaching the team, they're going to want to hear frequent updates and information anyway. So it's an instantaneous way of communicating with your key stakeholders. And not only that, but in turn, if you position your social media and use it effectively, it can actually have really good commercial value as well. If you've got a good brand and you know you've got a fantastic, you might be a really good family run grassroots club, if you can portray that on social media, get your stakeholders to share content and portray an image out there which a brand and a local business might want to invest in, in turn, you're helping to kind of balance your sheets by, utilising free platforms to showcase your football club. If you're not on social media, it's very hard to say to a sponsor, oh, can you write me out a check for this? Because the first thing they're going to want to see is what are the PR opportunities. So social media interlaces with that really effectively. And also just the kind of average day-to-day things that you might need to get out there as a football club. Social media can provide a really quick way, and I know we're going to go on to it a little bit further on about volunteer time, because there are ways as well. You don't have to be connected to that handheld device all the time. Like I said earlier, people spend like 3 hours a day minimum. My stats alone are pretty scary, but you don't have to be chained to it. There are also free platforms that people can use to schedule messages that are really important to them. So there's loads and loads of benefits, but they're probably the first ones that spring to mind.
Okay. Now, as you mentioned, we know volunteers struggle with lots of jobs and little time, don't they? What tips would you give our viewers so that social media can become an active part of their club without draining their time?
Yeah, I think that's a really key point, because a lot of people watching volunteer enough hours already, and you don't want your marketing of your football club and you don't want your use of social media to be something that is seen as a drain of your time. You want it to be something that's quite energising, and as we all know, it takes a lot to even put a game of football on. So social media, you don't want to look at it in a sort of negative way at all. So I would recommend, as a tip, a lot of scheduling tools that you have out there, which again are completely free. Two really good ones are Hootsuite and TweetDeck. So if you are on Twitter, if you are on Instagram, if you are on Facebook, you can use those platforms to schedule your messages out. So rather than thinking, oh, I have to do a tweet every kind of couple of hours or so, you could maybe put the TV on when you get in on a Sunday, spend half an hour and do all your scheduling for the week in that half an hour.
Which is exactly what we do at My Club Pro, isn't it?
Yeah, it's perfect. It's a really good way. You can still be reactive if something really good happens or you see some tweets, but you don't have to be kind of bound to it. And it's also a way of condensing your messaging, so you know that it makes sense as well, and you can be a bit forward thinking with what you're doing. And the one thing I think as well, once you do social media well and you're seeing that it's effective and you can see that you're getting better engagement out of it, and it's like that kind of thing for a coach. You set up a set piece and you see that you score a goal. You can have those same effects on social media, and I think the more kind of time you put into it, obviously the better results you're going to get, and with that it will seem less and less of a growing to do this, but actually a more effective use of your time from something you might have just brushed off as being not worth a half hour.
It becomes a bit addictive, doesn't it, when it's going well?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what you want. You want to see a club being successful on the pitch. Social media is simply a way of kind of extending that process. And like I say, I think commercial value for a lot of people watching this who run grassroots clubs, it's hard. It's a tough job. And even if you're just scheduling your message for a Sunday morning, bacon sandwich and a coffee offer that you've scheduled a few days in advance, you never know who might be on their way and see that message, and if they're then spending that money in your clubhouse because you've had the foresight,
getting a few sleepy parents out of bed.
Exactly that. So that is one way of saving volunteers time. Utilise those scheduling tools, and like I say, once you kind of get the taste for it, you can see how much of a benefit it will have for your football club.
Great stuff. Now, if you could give 3 tips around how to use social media, what would they be? Yeah,
so I thought about these really carefully, because as you can probably tell, I could rabbit on about marketing and social media for ages. But one of them I touched upon earlier, which was pick your channel. I think one of the things that we experienced when we held that workshop at the Kent FA was a lot of grassroots volunteers kind of scratching their heads, like finding maybe social media a little bit intimidating, wanting to serve their football club as best as they can, but thinking somehow that means that they have to be on every single channel, reacting to every single thing that's going on. It might be that you identify at your football club, you're very youth-centric, so actually being on Instagram and Snapchat is the channel for you. Alternatively, you might feel like actually we have a massive sector of coaches within our football club who are all giving up their time and could share best practice. So setting up a private group on Facebook where we can all chat in a private enclosed forum is best for us. So that would be my tip. Kind of pick your channel. Don't try and be a master of everything if your resources simply can't stretch that way. Pick the channel that you want to be good at.
Because you soon get bored, won't you? If you're trying to spread yourself too thin, you're better off. You'll see much more results from one channel over doing 5.
And it can be damaging as well. We talk about potentially, volunteer time being draining, but if you set up a Twitter channel and for that 1 week you've absolutely loved it, but then life gets in the way and you've had to Christmas coming up and stuff like that, you kind of forget about it. There's nothing worse than to see a defunct, disused channel. So if you're making that commitment to set up a channel, stick with it, gain that experience, and if you're really enjoying it and you think it's suitable,
then
you can expand into other ones as well.
Okay, so number 1, pick your channel.
Yeah, pick your channel, monitor your activity. So a kind of analogy I use is if you're a coach and you're preparing your team and you go out and play for 90 minutes, it doesn't stop there. You look back and you reflect on how that 90 minutes has gone, what you're using well, what you're not using well. And again, social media offers you that opportunity. Every one of the channels that I've described, besides YouTube, besides other channels that don't necessarily fall into the social media category, but can also be used to help clubs market effectively, they offer you free analytics. And by analytics, I mean simply a few statistics, a few numbers, which can tell you how many people you're reaching, how many people you're engaging with, what posts are doing well, what posts aren't doing so well. And that in itself can be really, really useful. And it gives you a bit of a boost to know, actually, wow, our club reaches loads more people than I was aware of in the first place. And then also, if you're going to sponsors, you can be like, oh, look, this is what we're generating for you. And it's not hard information. Like I say, once you set up your account, you get it there automatically. So it makes no sense not to use it. So that would be a kind of another tip as well. Monitor your activity and take a look.
Lovely. Okay, number 3.
Number 3, really, really simple. The use of imagery.
That's a big one, isn't it?
It was something, again, in our workshop, I know a lot of the volunteers of all different kind of experience with social media were quite shocked that by just simply putting an image, whether it be a photo, a GIF, a video clip, can increase your engagement by 94%. It's astronomical, really. So any of the kind of football clubs that I work for or volunteer with, I always try and make sure there's an image attached to the messaging that we're putting out there. Another key tool to use is a free website called Canva, canva.com. Any clubs who might feel like, oh, okay, we don't have a great base of stock imagery, and certainly you don't want to go pinching anyone else's on the internet. That is a definite no-no. Canva is a free resource that offers you size-by-size templates that you can use to create whatever content you want. So that's another tip that I would give to people when they're volunteering a few hours.
Great stuff. Thanks, Charlotte. Are you struggling with social media? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Comments down below, or you can tweet us using the hashtag AskMyClubPro.
Right, time to move on to our next topic with matters on the field. And winter is quickly approaching alongside the Christmas fixture schedules. And with the weather affecting fixtures and causing postponements all over the country, who better to invite onto our sofa next than the Kent FA Groundsman of the Year, Scott Byers. Scott, very warm welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for popping by. Firstly, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the role that you do as a groundsman?
Yeah, so I work at K Sports Cobdown as head groundsman predominantly. I maintain the pitch at Ebbsfleet at the Cufflink Stadium. I do pitch improvement programme visits for the Kent FA. Obviously that's targeting the grassroots teams, trying to improve their surfaces, give them helpful advice and push them forward as best we can. And just chip in with any other work I can to help anyone in the grassroots game, really.
Groundsman of the Year, how did that come about? That's great.
Well, you get nominated.
Yeah.
You can't put yourself forward, which is a shame. We got nominated by a few of the K Sports clubs. We have Maidstone United ladies as well. Okay. Some of the youth set up like Cobdown. So we got nominated and we got put in for that a couple of times. I think it's 2017, 2018. And we got highly commended this year with the IOG. So that was obviously a big achievement for us too.
That's a great accolade.
It really is.
And so you do a lot of work supporting grassroots clubs. Yeah. Those that don't necessarily have professional qualifications, but try and do a professional job.
Yeah.
What kind of advice do you give those people?
Well, I think the first thing for the volunteers that turn up on a Sunday and cut and mark the pitches and carry out all the maintenance that they do, free of charge, for the love of the game, really. I think that's fantastic and they should get all the credit they deserve, really. But in terms of advice, I mean, there's plenty of things I've put forward, just carry on working hard, do everything you can to maintain your pitches to the best standards. Work, it's a lot of work. It's more than people think, it's not just cutting grass. It's not just sitting on a lawnmower all day. There's divots need taking care of. There's, it can be simple things. But just keep working hard. Look out for courses. The IOG often have courses, level 1 and 2, winter pitch maintenance courses. The FA run them as well. Obviously, there's a small charge. Yeah. As there is with most things now, but as long as you come away knowing more than you did than when you went in, I think at the end of the day it'll be a big benefit. And obviously the people carrying out these courses know their stuff, so they're going to offer all the advice you'd need.
Excellent.
And after, I suppose, going away, and that's a really good tip, isn't it? Going and upskilling yourself and getting the knowledge. But for anyone watching, what kind of piece of equipment or tool would you say is a good starter, that kind of necessity that you would advise a club to invest in?
It's a really good question. It's a hard question because
it's
obviously
to pick one.
it really is. All I would say is, with all due respect, start with the basics. Obviously, the basics are just cutting your pitch, keeping it presentable as best you can. There's lots of machines you can go and buy. They all cost a lot of money, of course. Probably a ride-on rotary mower, maybe with a brushing unit and a rear roller attached. That's probably what I'd recommend. They're easy to maintain. They're reasonably cheap. They're quite straightforward to use. I'd probably go along with something like that.
And quite a lot of the county FAs now as well, because this programme isn't going to go out just specifically to people in Kent. I know Kent do a lot of great work, but there are sort of funds and things that grassroots clubs can apply for to get support, because it's a huge thing that the FA are putting a lot of focus on facilities, because it's such a massive thing for grassroots football.
It's growing all the time, and I think with the pitch improvement programme, obviously you get an initial visit from the IOG or myself or one of the other support workers with the FA. With that as well, you'll get a report afterwards, and then 12 months later you'll get a revisit with another report which will just follow up your progress and offer further advice. So it's really good. It's really beneficial to anyone interested.
And is that something again that's like nationwide? Is that a programme that's operating?
I believe so, yeah. I mean, it's being pushed everywhere.
Local county FA website or something.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now, you probably get asked tons of questions about what you do. I'm sure we're asking you a few today.
Yeah.
But what are the most familiar concerns you hear about when you're looking at various provisions?
I think going with grassroots in particular, it would be just pitch usage. So these pitches have very little spent on them. There's not a lot of investment at all. Obviously, a lot of them are council maintained. You turn up and sometimes the pitch might not have been cut for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. The lines can barely be seen. I'd probably say just pitch usage, and then obviously the lack of maintenance with that. And that combination can be a bit frustrating for anyone really doing the job. You can't really win with that scenario, so it's very difficult.
Okay.
We spoke about the winter months coming up and the torrential weather we've experienced as early as October, it's felt, seeing games postponed and cancelled. And for anyone watching this that's kind of well aware there's harder months ahead of us, what sort of tips can you give to dealing with adverse weather conditions?
I think if you haven't done it by now, obviously get your aeration going, some decompaction, open your pitches up, whether it's verti-draining, slitting, whatever you feel you need to do to your pitch. Get some air down there and let it breathe. Relieve the compaction as best you can. It will prolong the pitch. If you can get some winter seed, some top dressing on the pitch, just do whatever you can to prolong that playing surface as best you can, really.
I suppose drainage is probably the biggest issue.
It really is, yeah. And again, a lot of these pitches are clay profiles.
Yeah.
They're compact, they're solid, they're like concrete, It's very difficult. You haven't got any money to try and deal with that.
Yeah.
But obviously the only way to deal with that is verti-draining.
Okay.
Get good 10-inch depth, and it will relieve
Can you explain what's verti-draining?
So verti-draining is a machine which is fixed on the back of a tractor, goes on a PTO, and it just relieves compaction. It literally tines, pumps holes all over the pitch, and just lets the pitch breathe, relieves compaction.
And Scott, as well, you also look after 3G pitches, so we don't necessarily always think of them when we're thinking about the work that a groundsman has to do. But again, I'm sure there's probably a lot of people watching whose club might have made an investment in a 3G. You look after one at K Sports. What kind of tips can you give around looking after a sort of artificial surface that you have learnt since there's been one at K Sports? Yeah,
so we maintain ours at K Sports. We do 95% of our maintenance, really. Between me and the staff there. We brush it daily. The general rule of thumb is to brush the 3G for every 10 hours of use. Okay. That's generally what we go by.
Yeah. You don't think of 3G as needing to be that well maintained.
No, sometimes people think you just put it there, lovely, wham, bam. But
I think for a lot of clubs that is the case.
Yeah.
They may brush it once a week. With the likes of Dover and Ebbsfleet using the pitch that regularly, it's down to us to try and make sure that we're maintaining it to high standards. We do have a company come in called Replay Maintenance. They come in and give it a deep clean quarterly. So that just helps, reduce the chances of moss, anything on the surface that shouldn't be there. We'll obviously clear debris, clear everything we need to do off the pitch, keep it nice and tidy, and perform into its maximum.
Presumably they flatten over time, and then they don't bounce back if you don't maintain them.
Yeah, spot on, yeah. So they'll get bounce tests.
Okay.
I think they're yearly at the minute. Check the roll of the ball. It's getting checked regularly, so they've got to maintain the standards they're at.
Expensive thing to replace, isn't it, if you don't
Absolutely,
maintain
you don't want to get it wrong.
Great stuff.
Brilliant. Some really interesting insight. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. It's not
Thanks
an
for having
easy
us.
or a light task being a groundsman. So best of luck for the rest of the
Thank
campaign,
you.
and I hope the weather is good for you and the guys.
So do I, yeah. Thank you.
Now, if you want some more information on the work Scott does, give him a follow on social media. We'll put his links down in the description. He also writes a cracking pitch maintenance blog on the Kent FA's website. We'll list that as well. Right, let's move on to our topic of the week, which means we've been by My Club Pro Stuart Clifton. Stu, what have you got for us this week?
This week we're talking about sin bins, also known as temporary dismissals. So, start of this season, across all grassroots levels, these have been introduced. So now players will get a 10-minute temporary dismissal from the pitch instead of a yellow or red card potentially.
So really interesting for viewers that might not have been affected by this rule change. It is implemented for step 5 of the National League system and tier 3 of the women's game. So like Stu was saying, this season players across the country can be dismissed from the field of play for up to 10 minutes due to an offence called dissent.
They can, and we were really interested actually to get your opinion on this. So we ran a poll, didn't we, Stu?
We did, and our followers, well, they didn't disappoint. It was pretty split in general, the opinion. It was 49.7% saying yes, they thought it was it was an improvement, and 50.3% saying no, they didn't think it was an improvement to the game.
So basically right down the middle.
Yeah, pretty much.
People are really split on this one, aren't they? And many of the comments, they followed similar themes, didn't they? The first one we're going to talk about is lack of enforcement.
Yeah, so in this case, I think some of the referees sort of are, particularly maybe the younger ones, are more likely to enforce it straight away. I think some of the ones that have been playing the game longer, they probably maybe a bit more sort of dismissive of how much of an impact it's going to have on the game. So therefore, they've either just stuck to giving yellow cards or just not properly implementing them, I think.
Yeah, it was a standout comment actually, wasn't it?
But it's quite interesting because there's obviously a level of interpretation there. And like we were saying, quite a lot of people saying when it's enforced and it's implemented, it's a good system, yet some referees are still favouring going for the yellow card. Is it a little bit too complex, or is there too much room for digression?
I think there's an argument for that because, I mean, for example, you want to cut out dissent from the game, of course you do, for you want to bring respect into the game. But I think a lot of players have been playing the game a long time, and it's very difficult for them to not, say certain things that they're so used to saying. And also, they could just be doing something in frustration. If you played the game, you've probably done that. You say something in frustration, you're not really aiming at anyone, but people could get punished for that if the referee sees that as dissent.
Yeah, we did have a comment, didn't we, actually, from a referee saying he still preferred to issue yellow cards.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a tricky one. I think it can to send someone off the pitch for 10 minutes and then you've got to monitor it while the game's still going on. I know if it happens before half time, they've got to have the remainder of the time when the half kicks off again. Maybe it is a little overcomplicated. Yeah,
I think so. And I think as well, at that level, I mean, the referee's already got a tough job. I mean, the top refs make mistakes, grassroots level, they're going to make mistakes. So we all accept that. But, you're giving them another job to do as well as keep an eye on the game. I think it's, it could be too much for them, I think.
Yeah.
And I know we wanted to talk about topics that would divide opinion, and obviously that poll wasn't necessarily very conclusive, but it did draw out some really interesting points that we hadn't particularly thought of. And I know, Jason, there was one about the idea of the rule being an excuse to dissent that you were quite interested in.
Yeah, I didn't expect this one to come out, actually. I'd never thought about it that way, that actually, to have 10 minutes off the pitch for dissent was almost like a cop-out. I can do that and get away with it for 10 minutes. And I can still come back on the pitch and I haven't got a yellow card and I can crack on with the game. And that was the standout one for me. If you look at the FA's infographic here about how it works,
it's a minefield.
It's quite involved.
Yeah.
So for me, I think if you're going to give it, because they do brandish yellow card and then they point to the touchline and they go off for 10 minutes, I think that should stand as a yellow card as well. Because then it's, you've got that incentive to then behave for the rest of the game.
I think being a referee is a really hard job, and I just wonder, I completely endorse the sort of principle behind, particularly in youth football, you want to kind of stamp it out early on. But Jason, you think, again, having read all the comments from the poll as well, this is one of the things that came up, isn't it? It's just a little bit too complicated for a simple premise, which should be removing dissent.
You can understand why some referees are turning away from it and just issuing a yellow card, old school. And the last comment that we got a lot was, just needing to be implemented at the highest level. And this one for me is really important because, you even watch sort of 6, 7-year-olds playing football and they score a goal and they imitate the celebration of their favourite football player.
Yeah, they're role models at the end of the day.
Exactly. So if we implement it at the top level, then hopefully that starts to filter down to the bottom level. And it's an education, isn't it?
It is interesting, isn't it, how it's only being applied within certain realms of the game. So I think, obviously, we said about the certain tiers of non-league, pyramid, youth football.
Almost like it's a trial period sort of thing. I'm not sure they're 100% sold on it yet. But also you've got different levels of dissent as well. So, I mean, like, you could say one thing and then something else is completely over the line. So that's another, on that infographic doesn't show. So it's
another thing, I suppose, for club officials and coaches to think about when they're preparing their team for a match, isn't it? Because I suppose one referee's interpretation of dissent could be different to the one the next week. But overall, I guess when you look at the statistics from the FA about the respect campaign and what some of our referees have to go through, I guess a complicated
I think it's certainly going to take time, isn't it? To and perhaps as we go on and people get more used to it, it will have more effect. The one comment we did get quite a lot is when it is used, it does work.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely for it. I think, but perhaps with a bit of a tweak to the way it's currently implemented.
Well, Stu, we wanted something to ramble about, and I think looking at that poll, such a close result there. It's a good topic to start with. So thank you very much for coming.
You're welcome.
Having a chat.
Yeah, we have rambled on. It's a really interesting development across our game. We still want your opinion on it, so comments down below. Is it being implemented in the right way? And you can tweet us, as always, with the hashtag AskMyClubPro. We'd love to hear from you, not just about this, but any of the issues we've covered on tonight's show.
And like Jason says, this show is for the grassroots football community, so that includes you. We want to hear what you want to talk about. We love a good old chat about all things to do with football, but your input is really, really important. What do you want to hear about? What industry expertise can we bring to you on our channel that would help your football club run more effectively? And also, what topics have got you guys talking over a beer on a Saturday afternoon in the clubhouse? Let us know and join in our ramble.
That's right. And in our next episode, we're going to be turning our attention to creating quality content for your social media channels. And that's just about all we've got time for on this, our first ramble. If you've enjoyed the show, do give us a thumbs up and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time.
See you later.